Okay, everybody, Fort Buenaventura Mountain Men here. This is Thor. I feel weird wearing all these funny clothes today, but it's in the teens. It's pretty cold, and I wanted to get this video up of our frame for dry scraping hides. So we thought we just better get it done. A lot of people have asked about this frame that we developed and built for doing hides. We're in the process of doing an elk hide teepee. So we got a lot of hides to do, and we thought it'd be worth it to build a good frame that we can put hides in and out of. It works really well. So let me explain it a little bit. It's all cedar wood, which costs a little bit more, but it holds up better and it's a little lighter and easier to work with. These are 4x4s on the sides. They're 8-footers. So you'll need 4 of those if you're going to build one of these, and then a couple of 8-foot 2x4s. And they're true 2x4s when they're cedar. So I'll give you quick measurements just so you have them. These diagonal pieces, long point to long point, are 47 inches and they're 45 degrees. The corners are shiplap and bolted through with 1 carriage bolt, so you can disassemble it and take it with you if you want. The whole thing's bolted together. These are let in. It's easy to do with a slide miter saw or radial arm saw. And then, after the basic frame is built, we went ahead and took a bunch of cord, and I think this is like a nylon clothesline cord. It's really tough. You get a couple of a bunch of these aluminum bars. They're 1-inch bars by 48, and I believe you need about 3 of them. You cut these 2 inches and drill a couple of holes that are just the smallest hole you can find that the cord will go through. I don't know exactly what size that was, but you can just experiment. And then at that point, we went around the edge, and these are 4 inches center to center. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them on one of these sides. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on each corner. So they are 9 all the way around on each section. And then now we've got 8 sections, so that's 72 ropes. Then this is, you can sit in the house and watch Gunsmoke and make these. And once you get these drilled, we just lightly sanded the edge on a belt sander to smooth them off. And reamed the hole just a little bit so it's not sharp and doesn't cut the rope after you drill it. And then just tie a knot in one end, make a loop, come around and put a knot in the other end. So it's just a knot and a knot with this piece down on it. Then you're going to take, and after you lay this out and drill these holes, and these up on the corner, you're going to want to drill at an angle so that they don't go into this piece. Now you just take these ropes, stick it through the hole, double it over, put the loop through the hole, and on the outside edge you got a star drive deck screws. Are about 2.5 inches. You put it through the loop and then just screw it in at an angle so the smooth part of the shank is the purchase point for the twine, the rope. You can see right here it just pulls out, and then that pulls back so it can slide over the screw that's through the back. And then the basic idea is that when you put the pin on that goes into the hide, which I'll show you in a minute, you can do a double wrap, triple wrap deal over the rope and to shorten it if you need to. I've got them long enough so we can do a beaver hide in the center, or we can do a buffalo if we want. And just by wrapping those over many times and then tying a single knot, it's easy to break that knot and lengthen these or shorten them as you need to, depending, because every hide is different. So with that, I'll show you the pin that we use to hook these up to the hide. Okay, well, I've got the pins here. This is kind of the magic of it. But while I was getting them, I did a little quick figure, and just so I could remember, we need about 250 feet of the cordage, and I think I made those 30 inches long each, so I think that works out about 72. And these little pieces, I made these out of aluminum. They're 2 inches long, so you need 3 48-inch bars stock that's 1 inch wide, and then the hole goes in about 3/8 of an inch from each end. So that will tighten up pretty good. Now this works the same way when you're tightening a fly or anything else. You can see as you pull hard on this, you can just lengthen it and it'll grab, or you can draw this up and tighten it. So as you're putting the hide in, it's totally adjustable. You don't have to keep winding, wrapping. Now the pin itself, let me show you this. These are pieces of insulation rod that you use to hold insulation. You buy them, you can get them at Home Depot or anywhere in a big box. They're high carbon steel. That's what I use for this. They hold their shape really well. They don't bend very easily. We made these in a vise with pliers. It takes a little time, but once you make them, you have them forever. And it's the rods that go in between the joists, and they're bendable, and they hold the insulation up underneath the joists. So that's what I use for these, is I had some laying around. They work really well. So you bend these down. You can see this is probably about 3 inches long, and then a couple inches and a couple inches. And you're just going to bend that. And you leave this end longer, and then sharpen these on either a belt sander or a grinder. And that becomes the awl that go through the hide. And then the hide's going to slip down here. And then one of the knots will slip right into this groove and pull up tight onto here. And that's how you hook them in, and then they just come right apart. And so you can pull these right out of the hide, take them off. You can adjust them as you're putting it up. You may not want one where you have it. You can just take it out and move it to a new spot. You don't have to cut slits around the edge. You can put these right out on the edge. Hide is tough, so you don't waste as much hide. You don't have to cut it out of the frame like some people do. And I guess the other thing I wanted to tell you is when you tie the knots on the end of the cordage, do a double through, like a double overhand. Just, tie a knot, wrap it through one more time, and then cinch it up, and it'll make a little fatter knot, and then that will grab right into this little groove right here. So I'll show you. Once you put it through just like this, just slide the knot right in, and it will not come out. Just pulls tight, and then grab your tightener and shorten this, and it'll hold. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So at this point, let's go ahead and put a hide in it. I've got an elk hide here. Tried to warm it up a little with some hot water and rehydrated it. We'll see if it's still warm. But I think it's going to be a cold operation no matter what. Okay, I've got a hide over here. It's not frozen up yet, so we're going to hurry up and get it up in there before it does. I'm going to get my assistant iron gut up here to give me a hand, and we'll start stringing this thing up. Okay, well there you have it. We got that up. I'll tell you, probably upper 20s would have been a lot easier. Put a bucket of hot water on that hide just before we did it, but it still freezing up, and the hide's getting frozen as we were running the pins through, but they still went through. Make sure you sharpen the ends of those pins and leave them long. Better too long than too short. It's easier to get a hole on, and that is your awl. Every pin has its own awl. Make sure they're really sharp, and leave yourself enough so you can get it in there. And as you can see, you don't need to use all the ropes. You put them at 4 inches because you never know where you're going to need one. And so you don't worry about using all of them, but I would put all of them in because then you have a lot more opportunity to put one where you want it. And you can also put them, as you see on some of these, little crosswise to draw it in a different direction, stretch it a different way. It's real versatile, it's real nice. You can take one off, put it back on another one. Just probably not midwinter job, but you know, you can still do it. You'd have a hard time doing this by wrapping it when it's this frozen. The other point is I think in most cases you'll want to take an awl, kind of like a marlin, like a spike, like used undo knots. I think an awl would be nice. Make it easier. Maybe if it was warm and the ropes weren't frozen, it'd be a little easier. But undo your knots for the most part and make them all long before you start, and then you can re-shorten them as you go, because when they're frozen up like this, they were really hard to untie. And I think it was just a little warmer, it'd be a little bit easier, but still we were able to do something that would have been really tough otherwise, and it worked out pretty good. We got the hide in here. Now at this point we can just let this freeze overnight and actually start scraping on it frozen. Or even in this cold winter weather, the last one I had in here, after about a week of sitting in there, it was all perfectly dry anyway and scraped really well. At this point too, I'll just say this one thing because it's so important, even though it doesn't have much to do with putting the hide in the rack. When you do go to scrape, make sure that you keep a sharp edge on your scraper. When you're scraping, if it's sharp, you should pull a nice long piece of hide off of there, kind of like a wood shaving with a block plane. If you're just getting little pieces, you're killing yourself, working hard, and it's time to sharpen it. So I think the number one thing in scraping is to know how to put an edge on your blade. And if you sharpen that down and you feel that little curl on the bottom of the blade, about a 25-degree sharpen on that, it will pull the same way a cabinet scraper scrapes. With those, you burnish the top and it puts a roll on the edge, and that's what pulls the wood off when you're scraping, making a bow or whatever. It's kind of the same with this. That scraper has to be very sharp. It's amazing how much pressure you can put on it, but just start on the edge, and the nice thing about this is you can scrape up on the edge, all in here, and if you do touch that metal thing, you're not going to cut the rope and have to stop and restring it again. So you can scrape all the way up to the edge, and then when you take it out of the frame, if you just cut this little tiny tip across where it is, where the metal pin is, then you can take the metal pieces with that little piece of dried rawhide that's hard to get off, just stick it in a little bucket with some water, let it soak a minute, and they'll pull right off. So that's a good trick. When you take it out, you can just undo the ropes and leave the metal in there, then snip those little pieces off, any ones that won't pull out, and you'll be fine. Anyway, I hope that if you have more than one hide to do, or a few hides, or a lot of hides, or you want to make something that you're going to be doing hides, anything down from a beaver, which they call the mini buffalo, they are so thick they need to be scraped and thinned. And with this method, I've wet scraped my whole life. Probably done well over 100 hides, wet scraping, and elk included. But this dry scraping for your big thick hides is the way to go, especially where we're going to make a teepee out of it, because you have to thin it, and with a scraper you can really thin it. And it's nice, you're not all wet, you don't have to worry about the lime and the bucking process and all of that. So all of the Northern Plains Indians scraped, they're big animals, most all their animals, and the big animals, elk and buffalo, were dry scraped by everybody. That was the only way to thin them, to really make them usable. Anyway, I hope you learned something, and if it can help you out, great. And I'll see you next time. Thanks. Go ahead and look at our YouTube channel, subscribe to it. We'll have more stuff coming up. We've got a website, FortBuenaventuraMountainMen.org, where we try and keep up some information, and we'll link the videos to that. So thanks again, and from Fort Buenaventura Mountain Men, Happy New Year.